Here's a woodworking project that I took on a while back, and I never did get a chance to show you on a video on what it was, but it's called a quilt square. And you make these quilt squares and you make them great big, and you put them on the end of your barn or on the end of your garage or something out in the country for display purposes. But I thought they looked interesting to make, and so I started out to do this one, and I thought I'd make a little video showing you just exactly what the process was that we went through. So I looked on YouTube and searched for different quilt patterns. Here's one I really liked, and I thought it looked pretty neat. It was natural wood, different kinds of wood. So I thought about this one. Here's another one that caught my eye on my search. Just make different color blocks. The funny thing about it, all these blocks are the same one. This is finally the one that I really liked. I liked that intertwined picture frames on the back. So I kept looking, and sure enough, there's a pattern right there that shows you all the pieces and how they go. All you have to do is scale it to your size of the square and draw it out very accurately. So that's kind of where we are from there. So once you have your pattern, you have to start out with a heavy plywood backer board. Now, I got this one from a pallet that I found over here at the House of Tokyo. They've got a new piece of machinery evidently, and it came shipped on a really heavy pattern pallet, and so I picked it up out of the trash, and I got this piece of, it's about 5/8 plywood, and it was only so big, and so I had to cut it to make this square. I think I wound up with a square about 18 inches in the square. Now, the next question was, what do I make my quilt pieces out of? If you're making a big quilt, I'd look around and try to find somebody tearing down an old fence or something where you could get nice fence boards that were nice wide ones and make the pieces nice and big. But since little board, a wide piece like 5-6 inches wide, it wouldn't fit on here. It wouldn't work very well. If you're making a medium-sized one, you might go to like Home Depot and look in their twisted furring strip rack, and you can get some cheap little furring 1x3s, strips like that. But I looked around my scrap pile, and I had a lot of 2-inch thick deck boards that I had left out. I've got a pile of them out back here. And so I got to looking, and well, that's 1.5 inches thick. So I took the table saw and I ripped some strips off of this. Oh, that's loud. I ripped some strips off of this board, and I wound up with 1.5 inch wide strips. Now I left my saw marks on there because I wanted it to be rough like it was old wood. So I just ripped these strips out. The next step you do is you take these strips over to your miter saw, and you figure out a length, and you set a stop block on the length that you want, and you cut little pieces like this. And I cut a whole bunch of those little pieces because they all go together on your pattern to make your inside shapes. I don't know if you can see that or not the way I've got this laying flat, but see, you put these together so that they make that inside star. These are a little bigger than the ones I used. So here's where I started out making the intertwined picture frame squares, and then I went ahead to the pattern and put the centerpiece in there. So once you get all your pieces cut, well, the first thing you do is you draw that pattern that I showed you very accurately on your backer board. It has to be accurate so that you know where to put these pieces. Now that's a mistake I made. I cut these pieces out, the picture frame pieces, and then I looked at where they would cross, and I kind of guessed and I cut them so that they would overlap each other like they do. Well, that's not the way to do it, because then when I got to put them on there, I made sure that the angles fit tight. I wanted them to fit good. So I did that, and I disregarded the pattern that I had drawn on there. And that's where I went wrong, because once I disregarded the pattern, then that made all these off just a little bit. as you started at the center and came out, the angle got worse. And so I had a real hard time getting these all to fit in there right and to make them look good. The next thing I did was I decided my paint scheme. I wanted some gray and some white, and gray and white and blue. And I decided my paint scheme, and I took these pieces that I'd cut, laid them out on a piece of cardboard, and I painted them. When you do that, make sure that you mark them and number them and label them some way so you know where they go back. Because when I came back after the paint dried, I couldn't find out where they fit. And because I told you about earlier about this, not making these angles fit exactly the pattern, I was making the joints fit tight more than making the pattern fit right. Well, they wouldn't fit just anywhere. They had to fit in only a certain spot. So I wound up having to go back and cut each one individually so that it fit. And then I had to paint it the color I wanted. And then I just glued it down to the backer board. But when I got done, the angles kept getting worse and kept getting wider and the cracks worse. Didn't know what to do. I kept forcing myself on. I wanted to quit and throw it away, put it in the wood stove maybe. But I kept making myself work on it. So when I got it done, I didn't like the looks of it at all because the big cracks around it and everything. And I thought, what am I going to do? I found a tube of a spackling compound that is made for drywall, just patching little drywall pieces. And I put that on there and I rubbed it in all of the cracks, just kind of like you were grouting ceramic tile. Just rubbed it in all of them. When I got done, the spackling compound stuck into the rough parts of the board and the paint and made them look smudgy. So it made it even look worse. So I didn't know what to do there then, and so I took my random orbital sander, put a piece of about 220 grit paper on it, and I just sanded the whole thing flat. When I did that, I think it made it look kind of weathered and worn. Some of the paint came off in places, some of the grout stayed on in places and made it look dirty and done, and so I think it made it turn out to have a pretty good look to it by accident. Here's a couple of close-up pictures of the finished product, just to have them to look at. I guess it turned out okay. My recommendation is, if you want to make a barn square quilt pattern out of wood, don't waste your time. Just do not try it. It's not worth it. It's a lot of work, and it doesn't turn out with anything really great. But anyway, I've got one. I've done one, and that's it for me. Thank you for watching the video. God be with you and God bless you. It's great to have a workshop and to be out here doing this video for all of you to see. And I don't know, you keep, we all fall short of being exactly the way God wants us to be. But He will forgive us if we just ask Him to. And we can start all over 7 times a day if we need to. Just keep trying. And in the end, I hope we're all together.